So welcome to another interview where I'm going to ask someone from the US community what are their expectations, hopes, and maybe fears for this year's WWDC. So this time my guest is Kaya Thomas. Welcome, Kaya.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to chat.
Really excited to ask you my questions. So first question is, if you had one wish, what would you wish for at WWDC 2021?
That's such a tough question. Oh my goodness. Well, it's a developer conference. So I think my number one wish would be something for Swift UI, and it would be to have real collection views on Swift UI. I think that's one of the big factors that's holding Swift UI back from really being utilized fully. And so I'm hoping that we get that this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that like any addition to SwiftUI that allows us to move away from UI kit is going to be a great addition.
Exactly.
And maybe more realistically, what are the things that you expect to be announced?
Ooh, the expectation is tough too, because I feel like I've expected things and I haven't got them year after year. I would say now with M1, the M1 on the iPad, I am expecting Xcode for the iPad this year. I know I feel like every year we say that, but now that they just announced the M1 iPad Pros last week, I do think that they're going to do Xcode for the iPad.
It makes sense, yeah. Yeah, and like you say, like we all expect stuff, but we have no idea what's happening at Apple, and anyway, we're going to be like as surprised as anyone else.
Exactly. I think it would be cool since they opened up the Find My to third parties with the new AirTags. I'm hoping to see something maybe around that as well, especially some sessions around how developers and could take the best advantage of that. So hoping to see a bit more about that too.
Yeah, definitely I agree that maybe also now that there are the AirTags, some like evolution of Find My to make it like kind of step up, that would be pretty cool. Yeah, definitely. And maybe is there an announcement that you would be maybe kind of, we could say, scared of because it would like maybe like make you change your plan for something that you have in mind or force you to do a lot of rework on your apps?
I'm really scared. So thinking back to Swift, right? And when we went from Swift 2 to Swift 3, it was
Yes.
like a huge upending. And now we're coming upon Swift UI 3. And so I'm very, very nervous. Same thing with Combine as well, right? Combine is maturing. I don't think last year we got as much with Combine. So I'm expecting that this year we're going to get a lot more. So I'm a bit afraid that there's going to be really overarching changes with Swift UI and Combine that require a lot of rewrites.
It's true that for the people who have been early adopters of Combine and Swift UI, yeah, there is a big risk to spend like some weeks just refactoring code or adapting or that kind of things. Couldn't agree more on that one. And did you have something else to add?
I think that we should honestly expect those rewrites. And it's kind of sad because I think the early adopters were really excited about Swift UI and whatnot, but I think it's going to be a lot of work after that summer.
Yeah, and I mean it's kind of part of the game where you're an early adopter. Like, of course, WC session they don't like tell it to you, but if we remember, like when SwiftUI was announced, the code in the sessions was obsolete like 1 month after. So in a way, it was kind of a sign that things are not set in stone for a good time.
Yes.
Uh, and so my last question was, so what I was really interested is that you have contributed to big apps, but you've also released your own app on the App Store. And so I wanted to ask you, does WWDC feels different in each of these contexts?
Oh, 100%. It's very, very different. I think one of the great things about DubDub is you get both. So if you work at a big company or whatnot, there's a lot of benefit that you can get out of it as well. What I've seen a lot of times, if you work on these larger apps, a lot of times you do get access to those sessions. You'll be able to talk to those Apple engineers a bit easier. You'll have an Apple developer partner that most likely works with your company and team. And so you'll have those guaranteed spots almost, which is really, really great. But one things I think is great about the indie development side is you have your community. And I think that's the part that's really awesome, because a lot of time as indie developers, when you're working on your own app, you're working alone or maybe with one other person. And so WW is really the time that you get to talk to other app developers. And even in our virtual context, right, there's always virtual events and meet people, and you kind of get that team camaraderie that you oftentimes don't get when you're an indie developer. So it's definitely very different. I think you get very different things out of it depending on the context. And if you're working on a larger app, usually there's very, very specific things that you're looking for. Like when I was at Slack and I was working on notifications, I was looking for those Apple notification engineers very specifically. But as an indie developer working on WeRead 2, it's a bit more general in terms of what I'm looking for from WW, and just trying to see what new things I can take advantage of. That's the fun part too of working on your own app, is usually you get to be an early adopter and take advantage of those newer things. Whereas when you're working on a bigger app, usually the new things are fun to learn about, but you don't usually get to adopt those for a couple of years out.
Yeah, that's right. That I agree that when you work in a big company, usually dub time, it's time for, you could say, opportunities. Sometimes in like growth or career wise, but you don't necessarily like will implement things in the actual app. Maybe we'll make a prototype and it will stop at that. So yeah, very nice to have this view. Like when you are an indie, maybe you have less access, but you have more freedom to implement
Yeah.
things and ship actually some things. So it's nice to see that WWDC always has value, basically, like regardless of what you are doing.
Yeah, it has value for everyone, I think. And now that it's virtual and 100% free, it definitely has that extended value. And I think that's the great thing that has come out of this, having the virtual experience, is that everyone now can take advantage of WW and feel like they're a part of it. Versus, I know usually for indie developers, when it was in person, indie developers are going to AltConf and they're usually sometimes can't afford to get that WW ticket, or they didn't get it in the lottery. So I understand now that, now it's open, everyone can take part, which is amazing.
Yeah, and something maybe that we could give as an advice for people who are planning to watch WWDC, so it's remote, but you can still get this community thing of community, like just by going on Twitter or on Reddit and looking at the post, what people are discussing, and you already like see all these opinions, and you can participate in a conversation like very easily.
Exactly. Definitely participate in conversation. There's always vibrant conversations going on Twitter during WWDC, because it's just like everyone's excited and all the announcements are happening. And so participating, whether it's on Twitter or Slack, Discord, Reddit, all those communities, it's great to get involved and have those conversations, and you can meet a lot of people that way as well. I would say too is make sure you don't like overwhelm yourself. I think sometimes even when it was in person, there's so many sessions, and sometimes
Yes.
it's like, oh, I want to go to every session, but remember that they're recorded. And so just kind of pick the top priority ones that you want to attend, and you can maybe bookmark the other ones for later.
Yeah, I agree. Like there is so much content that sometimes it feels like even if you try, like to space them out over the year, maybe you couldn't fit all the session like one per week, because you are going to miss out on stuff, and that's part of the game. And nobody watches everything, even the people who are very visible, or even
Yep.
these people, they don't watch everything.
No, definitely not. There's no way. Well, maybe Paul Hudson, but
Maybe.
I think I think the rest of us, no, we're not watching every session.
Exactly, couldn't agree more. Well, thank you, Kaya, for being with me for this interview and for providing this great answer and your point of view as someone who has experience both as working on big apps, like you said, Slack, and being also an indie developer.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I hope everyone enjoys WW this year.
I'm sure we're all going to enjoy it and also be very surprised. Well, thank you all for watching, and see you next week for another interview. Bye bye.